Good morning and good day to you, brothers and sisters. This lesson, we're going to try to figure out who the saints are. Who are the saints? Who are the holy covenant people of Daniel chapter 11? Who are the saints of the book of Revelation? Does the answer to those questions depend on what time in mankind's history that you're looking at? I'm going to try using scripture to answer those questions today. I think you'll find this interesting. I think it's really going to spark your interest in pondering these things because it's real important. The Antichrist, is he going to be making war against the holy covenant people, or is he going to be making a war against the saints? Who are the saints? Are we talking seed of Jacob, natural branches? Are we talking Gentile, wild, grafted on branches? Let's try to get all that straight. But again, we're going to simplify this. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at who the holy covenant people are of Daniel 12 and who the saints are of the book of Revelation only during the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is from the sixth seal through the sixth bowl. Well, to be more accurate, the wrath of the Lord of hosts, which is the vast majority of the day of the Lord. In fact, it's all of the day of the Lord, except for the final day, the last day of the age. That's the seventh bowl, the Battle of Armageddon, also called the day of his fierce anger. So, the day of the Lord, sixth seal, through the last day of the age, seventh bowl, would be more correct. So, this is the time frame that we're asking ourselves, who are these saints alive at the time that Lucifer, old Leviathan, when he is cast out of heaven and to earth, and he's going to overcome and make war against the saints for 42 months? That's the period we're looking at. In other words, from the time of Adam and the 4,000 years up until Jesus started his testimony, we're not looking at those 4,000 years. We're not looking at the last 2,000 years from the time of Jesus till now. We're not going to try to categorize saints and Gentiles and old covenant people, holy covenant people. We're not going to categorize any of that. Only the people who are alive during the day of the Lord, or at least the start of the day of the Lord, when Satan is cast out of heaven, which actually happens at the fifth seal. Fifth seal is 390 days long. Of course, at the sixth seal is when the day of the Lord begins. Right after Egypt and the Confederation of Nations from the northern and central Africa, along with Egypt, make a preemptive strike up by the river Euphrates on the king of the north. That's found in Jeremiah 46. That's going to bring the fifth seal period to an end. And then the king of the north is going to head south towards Egypt and Africa to collect the spoils. But he's going to pass over the mountains of Israel, and then the first bit's going to be. Okay, so we're not looking at the first 4,000 years. We're not looking at the last 2,000 years. We want to categorize who are the saints at the time of the start of the day of the Lord, sixth seal. And who are the holy covenant people mentioned in Daniel 12? Are they the same people? Or is one just one group of the other? All right, you got to go that deep, brothers and sisters. Don't let it strain your brain. Here we go. We're going to make it simple. If we go to the book of Revelation, chapter 14, verse 12, here's what we find. Here, and that's a key word, and you'll see why when we go to other chapters. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Okay, at first glance you look at that and you go, oh, the commandments of God are the saints. Then we have the Gentile Christians are also going to be grafted in, but they're not really part of the saints. So we're going to figure all that out right now. Here is the patience. Remember, why does it use the word patience? Because during this day of the Lord, you've got to keep your wedding garment. Well, I thought you couldn't lose your wedding garment. Yes, you can. Matthew chapter 13, John chapter 15. You can be blotted out. Father, the final vine dresser, can pull you out of the seed, capital S, Jesus. All right? He can do it, and he does do it. In fact, Matthew 13 says during this time, this day of the Lord testing that's going to go on planet Earth, 3 out of 4 Christians are going to lose their salvation and not be rooted in good ground, good soil. I know you're not being taught that in church, but that 1 out of 4 who's going to keep their patience no matter what they or their family or their babies have to go through, they will pass the test. They will overcome the devil. How do you do that? Revelation 12:11, Revelation 6:11. You overcome the devil by keeping your wedding garment. All right? You keep the faith of Jesus Christ. You claim his blood. You testify. All right? And you do not love your life unto death. No matter what happens, you will not take the oath, the mark of the false Messiah, because everybody's coming off the fence during the day of the Lord. That's one of the purposes of the day of the Lord. Once and for all, right before Jesus comes to set up his kingdom, all right, and to start the millennium here on earth, not in heaven. Hello, some of you denominations. Everyone's got to come off the fence. First, the false Messiah is revealed, and then 1,335 days later, the true Messiah is revealed. Now it's time to judge. Who are the 3 out of 4 Christians that took the mark? Who are the 1 out of 4 who were willing to die or starve to death or whatever it takes to make sure they do not take the mark? But again, we're trying to figure out Gentile Christians, how do they come into play? Who's the Holy Covenant? Here we go. Again, verse 12 of chapter 14 in the book of Revelation. Here is the patience of the saints. Remember, they will have on the wedding garment when Jesus returns on the last day of the age at the 7th bowl. They will have on their wedding garment if they're still alive. Most of them won't be, but the ones that are, if they're true saints, they will stay saved. They will keep their salvation. The Lord will never let you go. All right? But you can take the oath and the mark of the false Messiah. And we know from the book of Revelation that once you take that mark, you cannot, upon Jesus' return to earth, or upon the day that you stand before the judge, you can word it that way, you cannot say, I'm sorry. When they cut my baby's head off, that was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I took the oath and I took the mark and I bowed a knee to the false Messiah. You can't say that. You can't. You can't use that as an excuse. I know that's some tough talk, brothers and sisters, but the Bible is very clear what happens if you take the mark and pledge the oath to the false Messiah. Remember, this is an arranged marriage. People are predestined to live out eternity with Father and his Son Jesus, and most people are not. You're going to manifest your soul in this human body, will manifest into what you were meant to become, and you will go where you were meant to go. Now, a lot of people don't understand that kind of talk, and they don't believe it. Okay? And even if you don't believe it, that's okay. That still does not take away from the truth of this lesson. If you take the mark for any reason, you will be thrown into the lake of fire. You will be. And you will be separated from Father and Son, from the family of God, for eternity. We as Christians need to do a better job of getting that word out to our children, to our friends, to our neighbors, to our loved ones. The false Messiah will be revealed first. You will be here, Christians. What do you think this chapter we're reading about says? It says you're still here. Keep the patience. Oh, these are people who come to know the Lord in Israel after we're out of here. You're wrong, brothers and sisters. You have been lied to. When the Lord comes back at the seventh bowl, last day of the age, he is not bringing back with him anyone who has not tasted death. Only the dead in Christ are brought back and glorified. Then those of us who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds at the seventh bowl battle. He's resurrecting his army. Back to this lesson. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Now, I'm getting ready to show you a verse in chapter 13 that's going to clarify 14:12. It's going to clarify it, and you cannot say there's any more confusion about 14:12. All right? Let's go over to 13:10. Make sure you mark these in your Bibles, brothers and sisters. 13:10 is going to clear 14:12 up. Then we're going to go look at Daniel 11 and 12. 13:10. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity, and he who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Okay, in other words, when Father gets done using the Antichrist and his army as the rod of his indignation, then he's going to have the 10 horns turn on the 7 beast cities. Then when Jesus comes back on the day of his fierce anger, the wrath that we are not appointed for, then the Lord's army, Jesus, the commander of the Lord's army, is going to have his way, and now it's to repay all of those who come against Father's people, his land, and his inheritance. They're going to get what they got coming. But notice what it says here in verse 10. Here, there's that here again. Remember, here was twice in 14:12. Here is the patience of the faith of the saints. Notice the phrase faith of the saints. Go back to 14:12. And the faith of Jesus. So if you had any questions about the people who have the testimony and faith of Jesus being part of the category called the saints, if there was any question that you may have had thinking maybe the saints are just a seed of Jacob, holy covenant people, and we're grafted into the same tree, but the saints are the natural branches. If you ever wondered that, this clarifies it, that those who have the faith of Jesus have the faith of the saints. So the saints are the Christians during the day of the Lord period. Again, I am not talking about the last 6,000 years. I'm talking about these categories of names that we're discussing here during the day of the Lord. So without question, during the day of the Lord, Christians, people who follow Jesus Christ of Nazareth and have the faith in him that he is the true Messiah, and they understand that he is the one that they're waiting on, and they understand that this false Messiah was Father warned us in the Bible all throughout Scripture that the false Messiah would be cast to earth and revealed first, and they knew that the voice of their shepherd, and they know that's not him, and they will not take the mark, and they will hold out and keep patience no matter how long it takes. But Father in his mercies have told those who are willing to read the letters from his son, your fiance, he gives you the exact amount of days that you have to keep your patience, to hold out. It's in Daniel 12. He tells you 1,335 days following the abomination of desolation. All right? Exact amount of days following that event. He's going to make sure that the people who are the saints of the end times, the people who have the testimony and faith of Jesus, the Christians, are the ones who are going to know exactly how many days you have to hold out for. And most of you, well, many, let's word it like that, many of you will be killed. And many of you will be alive and never have to taste death ever. But don't necessarily consider yourselves as the winner versus you say your neighbor who's a Christian. They got beheaded, but you didn't, and you held out to the end. You are truly the blessed that will never have to taste death. Don't think you got one up on your neighbor who got caught and he got beheaded, because the martyrs of Jesus get a special reward throughout eternity. So, just throwing that out there. Yeah, but he got his head chopped off. Yeah, but for hundreds of trillions of years, he's going to be a higher rank than you are. Yes, there's a rank structure to the millennium, to eternity. You know, maybe he's a governor and you're a mayor. Whatever. We'll find out someday. But the faith of Jesus, and here we see the faith of the saints. And when it says here is and here are, I believe that's referring to letting you know that these titles belong to the day of the Lord. Okay? We're talking about here, this time, this day of the Lord period. During this time, the saints are the Christians. Are you with me? But they also must keep the commandments of God, in addition to the faith of Jesus, to be considered saints during the day of the Lord period. 6th seal through 7th bowl, return of Christ. Okay, so we don't have to wonder, does the title saints include the Christians? It is the Christians. Now you may say, and here's what you're probably thinking now, brothers and sisters. Well, what about Israel? What about the seed of Jacob, Jews, who are in Israel during the time that Lucifer is cast to earth? How do they come into play here, and do they have a particular title during the day of the Lord? Well, let's go to Daniel chapter 11. And then the next question you should be asking yourself, is the title saints used in Daniel chapter 11? And no, I didn't find it anywhere. But I did find a title of people called the Holy Covenant people, also called the Covenant people. And it's also called your people in regard to Daniel himself. His people is called your people in Daniel 11 verse 14. And also violent men, or military men, or mighty men, you might want to say, of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. Now, does that mean aircraft falling out of the sky? I believe so. But the bottom line is, the military men of Israel here at the start of the 70th week of Daniel, which I believe starts in verse 13 and 14, starts the 70th week. The first seal is loosed in verse 21, when the vile one from the vile city of Nineveh shall arise as king. You could actually count 2,300 days from the first seal being loosed until Jesus returns at the 7th bowl, last day of the age. Did you know that? See my other lessons. So, here is the seed of Jacob being called your people. All right. Now, if you come over here, continuing on with Daniel 11, I know it's hard to read my Bible, brothers and sisters. It's well seasoned. You need to have your own Bibles open anytime you study with me. We're looking for titles that belong to Israel. And then we're going to try to see how that relates to the Christian saints. All right, we're going to look at the relation of these titles. Now, if you come down here to verse 28, you see a title of people called, or a title given to a group of people called the Holy Covenant People, small h. While returning to his land with great riches in his heart, this is the Antichrist, he shall be moved against the Holy Covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land up north. You know, we talking up by the Euphrates River? I believe so. Now, the Euphrates River is not just in Iraq, though. You could be talking about the Euphrates River in Syria. But we know the headquarters during the day of the Lord for Babylon, the great city, is actually Baghdad. We know that. Just like it was thousands of years ago. Same city. But here's a group of people called the Holy Covenant People. Notice it doesn't say against the saints. Keep watching though. Hang with me, brothers and sisters. Here in verse 30 it says, "For ships from Cyprus shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against" who? The saints? No, the Holy Covenant, "and do damage, so he shall return and show regard for those who forsake" the what? The saints? No, who forsake the Holy Covenant. All right, this is talking about the people residing in Israel. This is the natural branches. We're not talking about the saints here. We're talking about Israel being at war with the king of the north, the Antichrist and his army. All right? Duking it out. Now, verse 29 starts the fifth seal, brothers and sisters. The beginning of sorrows are over. Verse 29, the appointed time. Now we're talking about the fifth seal. Now, Satan's going to be cast out of heaven and take over the mind and body of this king who has arisen. And then you had the horses of the apocalypse. Now, continuing on with the fifth seal, you see the abomination of desolation and the daily sacrifices taken away. When that happens, when this right here in verse 31 occurs, you can know the exact day of Jesus' return. In case you missed when the first seal was loosed and when the exact date that the Antichrist rose to power peaceably and signed the peace agreement and all of that, then he plucked up the 3 of the 10. Well, if you miss all that and it gets a little confusing watching the news, if we even have electricity, who knows by then. But if you miss all that, if you find out when this happens in verse 31, you still know exactly when Jesus is going to return, 1,335 days. That's what it says right here in Daniel 12, 12 and 13. 12, 12 and 12, 13. You'll know exactly when Daniel is going to arise, be resurrected with the bride of Christ right there. So you know. But we're here to try to decide who are the Holy Covenant people. The Holy Covenant people were mentioned in verse 28 of Daniel 11. The Holy Covenant people are mentioned in verse 30 of Daniel 11. Here in verse 32, they're just called the covenant people, not Holy Covenant people. We're still talking about the nation of Israel. But to end this lesson, to bring it all together for you, brothers and sisters, notice what you see in verses 32, 33, 34. Let me read that. Starting with verse 32. Those who do wickedly against Israel, against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery, the Antichrist, who's now being taken over by Satan. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. Who are these people if they're not the Holy Covenant people? These people, and we are primarily still talking about inside the nation of Israel, but these are the saints. But they're not called saints here. They're called the people who know their God. And then a verse later, they're called the people of understanding. These are the saints, and they're not just the saints. These are the saints who truly read the Bible. They study latter days, or at least they'll be taught. Maybe the 144,000 are teaching them, whatever. But these saints who are not called saints here, these are the people who know their God. They know who Jesus is. They know who Father is. They know Father's plan. Shall be strong. They are not worried about being caught, going on trial, getting their head cut off. They will carry out great exploits. To do what? To fight and kill the enemy? No. What do saints do? They preach and they testify to the truth and to Father's plan. That's what they're going to do. They're going to get the word out inside of Israel that this is the false Messiah. Whatever you do, don't take the mark. And they're going to do a good job. Now you're also going to have Elijah and Moses show up here on the scene. Amen. They're going to start doing some teaching too. And 144,000 are going to be doing some teaching. But they are called now, not just the people that know their God. In verse 33, it says, and those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Now they're called the people of understanding. Okay, these are the poor who watch and know their God and know what their Father is doing. These are the Christians inside of the Holy Covenant people, or inside of the land of the Holy Covenant people. They could be Jew, they could be Gentile, it doesn't matter. The saints, the people who know their God, they know what their Father is up to. You read about that in Zechariah 11. They're also called the people of understanding. So they're not the Holy Covenant people. Now they have their own category because they are Christians inside of Israel and also around the world. But what I need you to look at, brothers and sisters, is verse 33 says that they shall understand and shall instruct many. Now, the mark of the beast test is a test. It's also sometimes called the curse. All right, or the curse of the summer basket. All right, this test is going to go out through Israel and throughout the world. It's already begun in a sense, but it's not the day of the Lord yet. We're talking about the test during the day of the Lord, 6th seal through 7th bowl. Right now we're still looking at the 5th seal right in here. Verses 29 through 39, that's the 5th seal. But to instruct many. In other words, there's going to be this period of instruction while all of this stuff is going on. Christians are going to be brought up on trial. Many of them are going to be beheaded. All right? The day of the Lord's 6th seal has not started yet, even though there's plenty of war and fighting going on in the Middle East. 5th seal is going to end with Jeremiah 46. Egypt and the king of the south confederation of northern and central Israel. All right? They're going to go on up there to the river Euphrates and fight that big Jeremiah 46 war. King of the north versus king of the south. And Egypt and northern central Africa are going to lose. All right? We're talking 5th seal here. But this instruction, what's going to happen, brothers and sisters, is when the mark of the beast test is administered in Israel and throughout maybe most of the planet, it's going to be followed by the test. The instruction will be followed by the test. What happens? Everyone comes off the fence. Everyone must come off of the fence and choose one Messiah or the other. The vast majority are going to choose the false Messiah and think that he has come to bring peace to the world. He's going to finally get all of Abraham's people, children, together. And the Antichrist is going to show you the Quran. He's going to show you the Jewish Talmud, forgive my ignorance, and show you the Holy Bible. And he's going to try to twist the scriptures and bring it all together. And he's going to start healing people and doing signs and wonders. And people are going to believe. But those people who understand and know their God, who Father predestined before the foundations of the earth. Those are the souls that he chose before your soul was ever put into a man of dust body. He chose you. Read the book of John. He chose you to live with him and his Son throughout eternity. You will not fall for this. The instruction will go forth, and many people inside the Holy Covenant people of Israel will become saints. But during the day of the Lord, the only people who get the category of saints are those who have the faith of Jesus and keep the commandments of God. You better know what the commandments of God are, and you better keep them along with your faith. Remember, we read that in Revelation 14, 12, and Revelation 13:10. So, brothers and sisters, let there not be any more confusion. During the day of the Lord period, when the Antichrist is here, and when when Satan is here, for the last 3.5 years of the 70th week of Daniel, when he's here, the saints are the Christians who not only are Christians in regards to their faith in Jesus, but they also keep the commandments of God. Those are the saints. Many of them will be beheaded. Don't forget, Revelation 6:11 says that there's a certain number that Father is watching and looking for of Christian saints who will be martyred and beheaded, a method to their execution. The method is shown in Revelation, I think it's 20, maybe verse 4. That's the method, the beheading method of the saints who will not take this mark. Brothers and sisters, I hope this has been a blessing to you. If you've ever had any confusion about, is the Holy Covenant people the same group as the saints? Are the saints only the seed of Jacob, not counting the Gentile Christians? I mean, hopefully this did not give you more questions than what you started with. Hopefully this answered all of your questions. If it doesn't answer your questions about the last 6,000 years, at least I think now you know who these titles of groups of people represent during the day of the Lord, the last 3.5 years of the 70th week of Daniel. Go forth, brothers and sisters. Let people know there's not going to be a secret rapture. Christians are going to be here. The test is going to be administered. All right? Sometime during the second half of the 70th week, the test is going to go forth. There's going to be a lot of nations conquered by this 200 million man army that eventually will go forth at the sixth trumpet. What's going to happen to America? Australia, Canada, Britain, France? I don't know, brothers and sisters. I know we are deserving of destruction. Our nations deserve to be completely devoured and burned and purified. We deserve death as a nation. You know it, and I know it, and Father knows it. So yes, we should be praying for the peace of Israel, but Israel is going to be defeated. They are going to be completely wiped out. Now, what I mean by completely wiped out is their nation, their government, their military is going to be wiped out. We know from Zechariah chapters 13 and 14 and Ezekiel's chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and so on, we know the percentages, the statistics on how bad Israel is going to suffer. Israel will be taken captive. There may be a few left inside of Jerusalem when Jesus stands on the Mount of Olives at the seventh bowl, but not and lets them escape over to Bethany, ancient Azal, now called Isaiah. There may be a few thousand, but Israel is going to Haifa, Tel Aviv, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, you name it. They're going to be taken as slaves back to the 7 beast cities, or to the beast kingdom. Many of them are going to go to the capital, which is going to be Baghdad. We're already starting to see this command post, this command center, come into fruition between Iraq and Iran and Russia and Syria. It's all coming together right now in 2015. But Israel, 1/3 is going to die from war, another third is going to die from pestilence and famine, and the other third is going to be on the run and bound and taken captive. The Bible tells you in the book of Amos and some other places, when you're taken captive, don't worry. You don't have to worry about giving a testimony at that point. Now, when you're brought on trial, yes, especially in Israel. But there's a lot of passages in Amos that say, keep quiet. Yes, you're a slave. You got your face in the dirt, and you're bowing to the enemy. But don't take the mark. Now, don't get confused. Don't take the mark. But if you cannot take the mark and keep quiet and just do the work of a slave, be patient while you're bending over and you're digging that ditch and you're putting up buildings and whatever these slave masters from the B cities have you doing to build their capital city in Baghdad or to build up their walls in Mecca or whatever. Do the work of a slave, be quiet, but don't take the mark no matter what you got to do. Brothers and sisters, I hope this lesson has been a blessing to you, and I can't wait to see you next time.